What's up, faithful listeners? Welcome back to another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. With us this week, we are joined by Mr. Alex Lindemuth. And guys, this is a great episode going over his last year's kill and some traditional archery talk. We also sit down to discuss how to come back from a wounded animal and woodsmanship. Guys, in the episode, there's a little nuances that I want you to pick up on, and it's just how quick Alex just kind of talks over little detailed things of his past hunt. And that's just a testament to his woodsmanship, really. And if you can pick up on that kind of stuff, that's how you guys are going to become better deer hunters. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed his time. And, you know, that what we talk about in the wounded deer is something that it's not talked about, and it's kind of demonized within the community of the bow hunting. And I just want to say that it happens, and if it does happen to you, reach out and talk to some other people, because it has happened to others, and sometimes it can be hard to jump back into the saddle or the stand, if you will, and get the job done. So, Alex, thank you so much for your time. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one. Traditional archery. I really like going down this road here, so let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. With us this week, we are joined by a traditional archer, a guy that likes to do hard shit, Mr. Alex Lindemuth. Is that right, brother?
Yep, you're close enough.
So we were chopping it up before we come on, and I've been chasing you here for a little while, a couple weeks, and I'm super excited to have you on. And the first thing I want to do, man, is have you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and maybe what you do for a living, and where you're from.
Sounds good, yeah. My name's Alex Lindemuth, as Marcus said. I'm from Brockway, PA, born and raised here. I live just out of town a little bit, so grew up hunting some swamps and started dabbling in public land not long ago. But I work for a landscape company here in town, and I cut grass 5 days a week, so it works out pretty well, because by the time October, November rolls around, the grass is slowing down, and I can spend some time in the stand.
I love it, man. I love it. Up that way, yeah, brother. There's vast woods up there. So let's jump right into, what kind of hunter are you? And let me get a little detailed on that. So, not just what kind of hunter are you, but what kind of terrain do you prefer as a hunter?
So I'm big into hunting the swamps. So where I grew up at, we have a family farm here, and just out of town, like I said, and it's just a big swamp, and there's an old railroad grade there, and then it's my great uncle's farm, actually, and there's quite a few of us that hunt it between the family, but that's where I grew up hunting when I was young. So the swamps have kind of transitioned. I'm about 20 minutes from the Allegheny National Forest, and when I hit the Allegheny National Forest, I mean, that's just thousands of acres clean up to the New York border, into the New York border.
I know, man. It's so nice up there. It really is.
Yeah, I love it.
I've been up that way a couple times. I know a couple people from up that way. We actually have some guests that are slated for later in the year from that area to come on the show also, and I'm sure you'll know them. But I want to talk all about you, man, and I want to talk about the 2022 season. And let's get whitetail crazy, man. I got a switch that I flip in my head, and I'm telling you, I might lose my voice because I get all fired up and excited for these deer, man. I'm whitetail crazy, and even some of my friends are like, listen, everything else that you hunt, like, I know that you say you just enjoy them that much, and we think you're just whitetail snobby. That's what they say. So
yeah, I'm whitetail crazy 365.
I feel you, man. I love trout fishing, and I consider myself a trout bum, and I like killing and eating other stuff too, but there's just something about the whitetail deer. So let's jump right into it, brother. 2022 season, Buck. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so there's a lease. There was this property my dad hunted years ago. It was owned by Seneca Resources. Well, there was this guy he was actually State College area. His name is Paul Silvis, and he came up here and bought this tract of land. He has total like 6,000 acres, and it's a big lease made for riding four-wheelers on, and that's the main thing of it. I mean, there's four-wheeler trails everywhere. To get 50 yards off a four-wheeler trail out there hunting it's honestly hard to do. But when he bought it, it was in the contract that he didn't get the timber rights with it. So the Seneca Resources had the timber rights for, I think, close to 9 years after he bought it. And it's been I think 8 years or so. It's going on 9 years. But whenever he bought it, a lot of it had already been clear cutted, select cut. There was a lot of old cuts that were super thick, just 1 inch, 2 inch trees in diameter, but just stacked on top of one another.
Yep.
And he turned it into this big. Now there's pavilions throughout the woods, and it's a huge tract of land. Like it's just a big river bottom both sides. It just runs for miles out through this bottom. And once he bought it, since we were always out there and stuff, if you had a camp in the area, he kind of kept it small and sold passes to so many people. And it ain't much. It's only like $80 a year. But he liked to keep it for the locals. Well, I mean, now there's I think over 2,000 passes sold for it. So it's a pretty well-traveled four-wheeler area. I mean, even during the week, there's people out there in four-wheelers, whether they have a camp out there or anything else. So we get a pass every year. And we start hunting it, and the pressure just increased like crazy. So it's pretty much like hunting public land. It's pretty vast terrain, bunch of mountain laurel, old cuts, like I said. There's a big, I don't know if you ever heard of North Fork.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep. North Fork runs right through there. Yep. We've killed a lot of bucks that right around North Fork.
Good deal.
But yeah, so it was November 9th this year, and this is the spot I had a trail camera. It's if you to picture it a little bit, it's a west facing hillside, and on top it's just an old cut. I'd probably say 15 years old, super thick, just a bunch of bean pole saplings, and the whole hillside's a clear cut. It was cut I think 3 years ago, so it's pretty nice. A lot of vegetation, and the deer love it. And where the hill comes up, it's a knoll at the top, and let me think here. It's west facing. Oh yeah, so the cut would be up to the east on top. And with the trail camera I had there, I had a lot of deer that were cruising that south to north based on the wind. It was a lot of times whenever the wind was blowing from the east down over the hill. And a ton of does in there. I didn't have a ton of bucks early season, but a lot of does. So I knew once the rut rolled around, all them does were going up into that old slashing on top. I knew if I could hunt below it with the east wind during the rut, it could be a prime spot if I just put my time in there. And I hunted a few times early October. Never had any luck. I did see a couple does out of there, and that was pretty much it. And so I went in there November 9th. It was a rough morning. I was running late as it was, and a lot of people ride four-wheelers out there, and they'll drive them. I mean, not far from their stands and just park them on an old gas pad or something. But I got an e-bike, so I started riding my e-bike out there, which no one does it. And it was probably 3/4 of a mile riding on my e-bike. It's just a nice tram road to Hoy back in. It's a gated off road. And as soon as I started from the truck, my e-bike died, and I was like, son of a gun. So I went back down to the truck because I thought maybe if I could get the battery popped off, put it back on, it'd work again, because it showed half bar whenever it died, but it's super cold that morning. And it didn't work, so I pedaled a little bit, get off, walk it, pedal it, walk it. And after a while, finally, I tucked it in the brush and I walked the rest of the way. And I hunt from a saddle, so by the time I got in there, set up and everything, I mean, by the time I got my bow up and that, it was shooting light already. And whenever I got there, I grabbed the card out of that camera. So while I was up my stand, first thing there, I checked the card on it, and I had a couple good bucks, but nothing within like the past 2 weeks. Seemed like a lot of them were hitting it towards the end of October, because I had it on scrape. But where I was set up, I was in an old ash tree, and I didn't realize it. But when I got up in there, it was daylight at the time, but I looked up and the branches were like dead. And I was like, oh boy.
Been there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was sketched out the whole time, because if I'd move a little bit, there was just one dead branch up above me. It wasn't huge, but it was like 3 feet long, enough to do some damage. It would just like quiver, and I was like, oh boy. So I was pretty easy with my movements, but
probably helped you being a little slower with your movements.
Yep. But there's an old 2-track that ran from south to north, so I was facing south, like southeast, and that 2-track come right towards me, and about 50 yards before me it wide off, and there's a big scrape at that wide, and there wasn't a tree right there that I felt comfortable in without getting picked off if they came from anywhere. So I wanted to be out on that hillside, and it worked better with my wind, because nothing was really coming in below me where I was set up. I was set up right on the break of the hill, and it was about 9 o'clock, way down south of me, down that 2-track. I just seen a buck cruising. It was like 200 yards right along the bottom of this slashing. So it was like set up perfect. That's what I was there for. I figured if there was does bedded in there, there'd be bucks cruising out, just checking it. And I grabbed my bow instantly. And I mean, he had a little ways to come yet, but he covered ground. It felt like 10 seconds. He was already coming over.
I know that.
Well, when he hit that 2-track, it wide off and it went up over. Well, he hit that 2-track and he took a right, and I needed him to take a left to come right by me. So I heard on another podcast, Aaron Blasey. I don't know if you've ever listened to him.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time he had a buck come in, and it was so close to him that he didn't want to grunt because he said it would have picked him out. So he like turned and made it sound like it was coming from way down behind him a little bit.
Yep.
And that buck was headed up that 2-track. So I turned and just gave one soft grunt behind me just to kind of get his attention. He stopped and looked. He stood there looking around for like 10 seconds. And I made it sound like it was down over the hill, which he couldn't see at all. And he turned and just started coming right towards me. Well, the road that I walked in clean on the left side of it because I was hoping if a deer come down, most of the time they walk the right side of it. That's where the heavy trail was. I didn't want him smelling me. Well, he come down and he like cut across it. And he was at 20 yards. And when he cut across it, he smelt right where I walked in. And he was just standing there sniffing it. And I was able to get over. It was a weak side shot, actually. And I drew on him and I shot. And I thought it happened so fast I didn't exactly see where the arrow hit. But it was the first time I ever shot a buck, and he actually jumped up, and I don't know if you ever heard him do the roar. It's like it was wild.
Yep, I've been there, done that.
Yeah, he did it was like a big grunt. He started running down the hill, and then he stopped, started coming back up, and then I could see the blood coming out of the opposite side. So I was like, well, that looks like a good shot right behind his shoulder. And he come up into some thick stuff. It was like 60 yards from me. And I don't know how I didn't see him die there, but he went up in there. And I heard some leaves scuffle a little bit, and I heard a branch like break off of the tree. After that, nothing. So I sat there for a while, all worked up, made a few phone calls and everything, and I decided I was going to sneak out of there the opposite way where I came in.
Yep.
Get out of there, give him some time, and I ended up going back out there with a buddy and finding him dead right where I heard that noise and I last seen him go. So I was pretty pumped about that. It was my second trad buck, and it was cool.
Yeah, well, that is an awesome story, brother, and so I got a lot of stuff here to ask you about that hunt. So basically, you said that whenever you went in and you were setting up, there was a thicket that you thought that the doe were bedding in, and this was above you on the hillside. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would have been. I was facing southeast, and it was like east of me. The whole hilltop above me, even like out further south where he come from, that whole flat above me was all an old clear cut. So there was a lot of deer hanging out.
Okay. All right. And the only reason I'm wondering this is I'm just thinking the way that the deer come in and how you thought to set up for that. So were you anticipating on the east wind that the deer would be catching, a buck would be catching the thermals rolling downhill from where you were at, where the doe bedding was, or?
Yes, exactly. Because he was cruising right along that bottom side, and the wind would have been coming right out of that cut, and it would have been blowing right in his face. So he could cover just by cruising the bottom edge of that. He could cover. I mean, this ridge runs at least a mile. It's right along North Fork there, so yeah, it runs at least a mile.
Now,
so he could just cruise that whole thing.
If you were to look at that hillside, I'm just trying to paint a picture for people here so they can kind of maybe learn something from this conversation real quick. If you were looking at that hillside, how far up that hillside do you think that you would be?
Like elevation wise?
Yeah, so let's say give me like a quarter to a halfway up the hill, 3/4 of the way up the hill.
I'm pretty much I'm literally right where it breaks off and it starts to level out at the top. I'm right on that break. So my wind is perfect with an east wind. My wind just carries way down over, clean down into the creek bottom. Actually probably over the creek bottom.
Yep. That sounds wonderful. So basically you're hunting right off the edge of the military crest.
Yep.
Okay, and then so when you went in there and you said you that scrape was about 50 yards from you and you were setting up on that scrape and you didn't want to hunt right over just because you didn't feel that you had the proper cover for being in that spot. Now, hunting scrapes, how did you come about thinking, if there was another scrape in the area, would you have hunted that one, or was there a reason you picked that specific scrape that you thought was better than hunting a different one? Was there, was there signpost rubs there, or there's any other rubs? Was it tore up? Like, kind of paint that picture for us.
There's a lot of scrapes along that hillside. I mean, it's a pretty good scrape line out through there, especially like towards the end of October. But like the buck I killed, he come across there, and he didn't even pay any attention to that scrape. But That scrape there was like one of the more dominant ones.
Okay.
And it was, I mean, it was really worked. You could tell it'd been there for a couple of years. A lot of the other ones that were along it were just, them coming through there, making one here and there each year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool.
More of a community scrape. Like early October, I had a camera on it, and there was does hitting it almost every morning consistently.
Right. And then, what really led up to you getting a shot and killing that deer was you pulling just an aggressive trick, if you will, right?
Yep.
Most guys in that situation, like you were saying, like if guys don't know, yeah, I would be in the same boat. Like if a deer was that close to me, I'm not going to make a noise, especially
Right.
on a pressured deer, because as you know, you're done. They'll pick you out.
Right.
And the move that you made, they was either going to run away or he was going to notice it, right?
Yep, and that's just learning from mistakes. There's times when I was
Mhm.
younger, I'd have deer right there in front of me,
Yep.
50 yards, and I grunt at them, they just instantly pick you out. And, any buck, your 3.5-year-old buck and up, even a 2.5-year-old, they're not that dumb all the time.
Well, I just have one thing to say about that. Welcome to Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
And that's why, guys love this state so much and they hate it so much at the same time, because our deer are very educated, because we got a lot of hunters in the woods, and there's a lot of pressure other than hunting in the woods, right? We talk about all
Yep.
the different outdoor activities that we have in this state, and the show talks about all the time. That takes a toll on a deer herd too. As
Yep.
far
And I
as
don't think that'd work in every situation, but I think what made it there was he couldn't see that hillside at all, so it
yeah,
made it that much
yeah,
better.
that, and it's really hard to say, because how many different deer have different characteristics, right? They're just
Right.
they're just
Yep.
all different. Like I've seen 4 points lay their ears back and run off, 110-inch 8 point,
Yep.
and they're just all different. I mean,
Yep.
they,
I
they,
agree with that
they have
100%.
their own personality, and that's what makes them so cool. Um, but so when you were in there, I'm assuming you said you did have an east wind.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Okay.
an Eastman that
So
morning.
so I mean, you timed that up. Hey, I'm gonna go hunt this on an east wind.
Yep, it worked out perfect. A lot of and I was hunting there early season too, not that exact spot, but I was
Hmm.
hunting that general area, and that's what I was hunting on a lot was a east to a southeast wind.
Yeah. Yep. And then for you to go in there and figure out, okay, the deer are using this side of the two track mostly instead of the other side of the two track. Like, I just kind of want to put that out there for everybody to think about for a second, as far as how detailed you thought into this.
Yep, it's just the little things sometimes.
It's always the little things when it comes
And
to it.
that's it's like the same thing with my 2021 buck. There's so many little things. Like if one of them little things went wrong, I never killed that deer. It's just the way it works. And chasing after these whitetails.
Yeah, I know, man. And it's so funny though, because I swear to you, like, there's times where I sit down and I draw this up, and this is the way it needs to go, and I'm gonna hunt this wind and go in there on this and do that, and everything falls into place like I think it will, and then poof, here comes dark and I'm climbing down, right?
Yep.
And then on the total flip side, I go in blind and I'm like, boy, there's a giant scrape. This looks like a good spot. I climb up in the tree and here he comes, right?
Yep.
So
And
like
that's the 100% the truth. That's exactly how it is.
it is, man, and that's honestly the beauty of it. But there is times where we try to put ourselves in the best position possible, and when it pans out like it did and it works out like it did for you, it's a well-deserved deer. And I'm not saying that all deer aren't well-deserved. I'm just saying some feel a little better than others, and that is one way to make it feel a little better than others.
Oh, without a doubt, that made it feel just 10 times better. Just being that he read the script perfectly. That don't happen. I haven't had that happen too many times. Really come exactly where you expect him to come from and doing exactly what you expect him to do.
And isn't it funny, while you're sitting there in the tree stand the whole time, you keep thinking, boy, if that deer comes from that spot right there, right? If that deer comes from that spot, I'm gonna do
And
this. I'm gonna do this, and you just like, you play it over and over in your head, and then when it actually happens, you're like, oh shit, it actually is. It's actually
I
going down.
pictured a deer coming from where he was at all morning long. So when I seen him, I was like, "Am I actually seeing one, or am I just picturing it again?"
Ain't that something, man? I was hunting
Yep.
Ohio, and I had something similar happen. It was raining, and the wind was, it was raining sideways, but it wasn't raining hard, but enough to where I had to squint a little bit.
Yep.
And I was in a hang-on tree stand, and I didn't have a saddle or nothing on, but I had turned myself and flipped my seat up and I was leaning against a tree and kind of had my head against the tree facing behind me
Yep.
and just like kind of blocking out the wind a little bit. And I kept thinking, boy, I'm probably looking the wrong way, and there's going to be one that comes up behind me here. And, I'm looking behind me, and all of a sudden, I mean, this little spot I could see, out pretty far, and I seen the antlers coming, and I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. This deer is coming, and I'm looking, and I'm ready, and I ain't gonna hear them in the rain. And usually,
Right.
that's when they sneak up on you.
Yep.
So anyway, it came in, and I missed anyway, but still, just a little too far. I tried to make something happen on the last day that I was there, and it was about 40-yard shot, and I ended up clipping a limb. And sometimes I don't know, man. I've been there, and sometimes I just would rather make a mistake and be aggressive and walk, look at it and say, well, I tried.
Yeah, it's a big learning process. I've
Right.
done that a ton of
For
times,
sure,
and
for
I've
sure.
learned extreme from all of them.
And I won't take an inhumane shot in any way.
Right.
I really like to hang my hat on that because unfortunately I have been the subject of, I guess if you will, learning the hard way on shooting and wounding deer.
Oh yeah, I'm I'm in the same boat.
And that's something that I wanted to segue right into, man, because what you said was you shot that deer, okay? And there's a couple things that you see happen when you shoot a deer. I think that some people are really going to like where we're going with this. So, when you shoot a deer, you hear multiple different noises, and some of those noises kind of stick in your head, and right? You have that like that thud. It's like a hollow thwack,
Yep.
and it's usually okay, that deer is hurt, right? That sound like a mortal wound. Then you have that. It's kind of like a whack.
Yep.
And when I hear that noise, I don't get too excited.
Nope. Usually it don't mean too good.
And then you sometimes will get a noise out of the animal, right? And that's what you got. And everyone that I've got a noise out of, they didn't go very far.
And that's okay. That's so after I heard that. No, that's the first time I ever had a deer do that. And I don't know if it was completely unexpected. It caught him off, but after I left there, I mean, I went home and this is before I found him.
Mm-hmm.
I was Googling that, and I mean, there were some people that had just mixed emotions on it, saying how like, oh, they didn't find him and all this. It was a gut shot, and I was like, I know I wasn't that far back because I was hugging the shoulder pretty tight.
Right. So what do you practice whenever you track a deer, right? And I guess what I'm getting at is where did you learn how to track a deer, and what different things do you practice whenever you are tracking a deer? So take me right to the shot, right? You just shot. What's next?
So normally I've made the mistake too many times of just getting excited and I jump down out of the stand, jump them. I've had that happen on at least 2 or 3 different deer, and I never ended up finding them.
Mm-hmm.
And I give a lot of credits to my old man because he's very patient, very detailed whenever he gets into tracking. But a lot of times I was hunting by myself and I'd get excited, get down out, and I knew better than to do it, but I let my nerves take over.
Yeah, man. I'm 100% same boat, and I try to preach to people because I have friends that have shot deer, and they made good shots, and like they climb right down out of their tree stand or off the ground or whatever, and like they're tracking that deer. I mean, minutes after they shot, and I'm like,
Yep.
you're gonna pay for that at some point because
You'll learn the hard way, and I guess that's just what makes you better at it.
Yes, in that scenario, I think you're right. But what will end up happening for those listeners that don't know or have never been around that is you will jump that deer, and for one reason or another, that deer will clot up.
Yep.
And if it's a gut shot, good luck. If the deer's clawed up, good luck. They usually don't lay back down within a long range if you jump them.
Right.
And sometimes,
No, usually if you jump them that first time, I mean, a lot of times, a lot of the stories you hear is, oh, we tracked him for another 200 yards, lost blood, and he never betted again, or even further than that a lot of times.
Right. And, fortunately here in Pennsylvania, we now have the ability to call a dog.
Yeah, and I think that's huge.
Oh my God! For whatever reason, we weren't allowed to do that for the longest time.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I have no idea, man. But I am super excited about that because, like I said, I have people that are in that game. They got skin in it. They got the dogs, and I'm all for being able to find a wounded animal and bring that animal home.
Yep. I guarantee you that it saves so many deadheads in a year.
Oh, oh, I'm positive of that.
Yeah, without
Um,
a doubt.
but I guess to dive back into what we were saying. So you shot and then you backed out.
Yep.
So how long after you shot did you wait to even come down out of the tree?
So my buddy had to come from about 45 minutes. I mean, I had a half-hour drive back to my house anyway. So I got down out of the tree. I sat there roughly 45 to an hour. I was down out right
Hmm.
around 10. And when I left my bow in the tree, my backpack, and like I took off my coat. Like I just wanted to sneak out of there as quietly as I could because I
Hmm.
was just unsure. But
Yep, yep. And that's one thing that I think that we should just kind of put out there is I wait an hour. That's what
yep,
I shoot for. That's what I am comfortable with. If I'm not comfortable with going to look where I shot because it's real iffy, then I won't. If not, I'll go down and I'll see if my arrow is where I shot, or just kind of look and see what kind of hair or what kind of blood is in that spot,
yep.
and then kind of judge it from there.
Yeah, and it's something I didn't see him fall over because I mean where I shot him, where I found him was only 70 yards. But I mean, I at first I mean I felt very good about the shot, but you know how it is when you sit there, you just start second guessing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunately, yeah, it's true. And I don't know how many times like I've pulled my binoculars up after I shot and I'm looking at the ground all around, like what can I see? What can I see? Without getting down and disturbing everything and all that stuff. But I really like what you're practicing and what you're saying. You got down, you backed out immediately as soon as you knew or had any thought that, hey, this may not have been the best shot. I want to back out. I want to let this deer die.
Right.
And I had this conversation with Lane Hausner on one of the podcasts, and yeah, it's a super easy way to lose a deer to jump it. So for anybody listening, get down. Maybe if you think it was a good shot, maybe you can walk over and check out where you shot, or maybe not. Maybe just back out, come back in an hour and a half, or maybe call somebody for some help if you can,
Yep.
because it's one thing to track a deer and go do it alone and all that stuff, and sure, that's fun and all, but let's face it, I have way more fun whenever my family or my friends are involved in helping, right?
Oh yeah, especially in a recovery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hell
heck
yeah.
yeah.
And then especially you get to the deer, and if you don't have to pack it out, then you guys, you got help. You can get
Yeah.
to get the damn thing out of there. So
Yep. Sit there and celebrate it a little bit. It's way
yeah,
better having people
hell
there
yeah,
coming
man. And it,
around.
it feels like instead of you just killing that deer, we killed that deer, right?
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. I mean, you think back to all the tribes and stuff of native people, and like that's what they did.
It's a group effort.
It was a whole group effort, and that's why they celebrated. And it was, it's part of the kill. And we always laugh, and we'll raise a beer or a coffee or whatever in the air, and we'll say to the hunt.
Yep.
But like we were saying, so if you were to walk up there and find I don't know, blood with bubbles in it, is that a sign for you to proceed a little bit more? And
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so, blood, but I mean, I'd like to see at least a decent bit of blood. But sometimes, I mean, you don't have blood for a good 30, 40 yards. Sometimes further than that, just all depending on the hit and
for
the
sure.
shot placement of it.
Yep, for sure, man. Yep. Now, is there anything that you practice if you were to lose blood? Do you backtrack the spot that you found last blood and kind of make sure that the deer didn't do something funky? Because I know that plenty of the deer I track, when they're wounded, they'll do like crazy things that you would never imagine are right. So do you mark like a spot where you find last blood and then kind of back away from it and relook at it? Do you back out and I'm going to come in and back in the morning? Do you leave a jacket in that area because maybe there's coyotes or maybe the deer's dead around there or anything like that?
Yes, I mean, yeah. Usually for the most part, I mean, if I'm tracking one and it's good blood, we just we'll stick with it. My dad's very slow about it, and
Hmm.
that I mean, I've started slowing myself down a lot because sometimes it's very minuscule amounts of blood you're looking for. But if it gets to the point where it's pittering out and you're getting a little unsure, we always, whether that last spot be like a little dot or just a good sized spot, we always mark it there, and then just kind of span around from there and try to see, because sometimes they'll be going on a beeline, and next thing you know they're turning back around and
I know.
kicking back the other way or something.
Yes, I know, and that's what I'm getting at. So, so one thing that we like to practice and we like to do, as long as we have the help to do it, is like whoever has the hot eye goes first. So,
Yep.
if you've seen the blood, you're in front, right? And if I
Yep.
feel like for some reason the person that's spotting it, they just for whatever reason they see it and they just keep moving.
Yeah, they have an eye for it at the
They
time.
yeah, yep, exactly. And then the guys that are standing right behind them are kind of body searching up ahead of them.
Yep.
They're looking for a belly or something like that. Just or something funny. Here's a fresh cracked limb. Like maybe it moved up there before we. If we lose blood here, we're gonna go look over there or something like that. So
That's exactly how it goes too.
yeah, yep. And it's like I said, I've hunted with multiple different groups of people and been around a lot of different things. But for anybody listening that doesn't practice that, hey, maybe try that out next time. And if you don't have somebody to help you track your deer, by God, call me. I'll freaking do what I can to come
Yep.
help you because I feel for you, and it's really hard to get into, man.
Yep. Half the time I'm just as excited to find somebody else as I am my own.
That's the truth. That's the truth, man. So, but taking ethical shots, how do you kind of judge what is an ethical shot to you?
Definitely within your comfort zone. So like with the compound, I shouldn't have been shooting over 30 yards, but there was 30 yards is my comfort zone. But there's too many times that deer come in, you get excited and you shoot a lot further than what you should have been shooting, and mess up from it. But I mean, just a good shot. I mean, I know some people are against it, but I will take a frontal shot. I haven't done it with a recurve yet, but I did it 3 times with the compound, and every time those deer didn't go more than 50 yards if you place it well. But I mean, as long as you have the right angle and everything, and just a humane shot, so you're not putting that deer through anything.
Yep. I feel that, man. Now we had to step back out there for 1 second. Just a little malfunction there through the wireless network that is cell phones. But I was saying I had a deer, a nice buck. I mean, probably a good 120-inch deer, 125-inch deer, old deer. He was probably about 45 yards from me. I was in the process of getting up the tree, and what I did was I actually waited until light. And you were saying about climbing up in a dead tree. Well, in this area, there's a lot of dead trees, so I waited till it got light to climb a tree. And I was on my second step, and I just used two climbing sticks, full length climbing sticks with aiders.
Okay.
And then on the top, I use lone wolf sticks, and then on like the OG lone wolf sticks, and then on the top,
the longer ones.
Yeah, and then I use 2 aiders, and then I just put double steps on top of them.
Okay.
And it just makes it a little easier for me to get the next stick up and then get the tree stand hung or saddle platform, whatever I'm hunting out of.
Definitely, those double steps make that way easier.
Yeah, they do. They do. I found that you don't really need them at the bottom. The top is where you're spending most of your time. So
Yep.
I pulled. I have my lineman's rope on, my lineman's belt on, and I had my saddle on, and I was just kind of going hybrid. I had my tree stand, but I also had my saddle on, and I've been kind of doing that and using my saddle as like my my fall protection, if you will.
Yep.
And then also if I want to flip around, I can just flip around and hang in the saddle for a while.
Yeah, that's a great idea, honestly. Kind of a 2 for 1.
It is, man. And then all I do is I flip the seat up, and then I just take my pad off the seat and I put it below, like underneath the seat.
Yep, on the bottom of the seat,
so that I can just push my knees against it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it works pretty well, man. But anyway, I was on the second step. I had my tree stands on my back, and I don't put nothing else on my back when I climb. I just put my sticks on my waist, and then my tree stand on my back, and then I leave my backpack on the ground, and I hoist it up all together. I'll hoist my bow up with my backpack, all that, or I just won't even use a backpack, and I'll just stuff all the stuff into my saddle or like my pockets and such.
Yep. That's if I normally like I usually have like a bigger bag on my saddle, and then
Hmm.
two for my ropes. But usually that bigger pack, like if I was just doing a quick hunt, I could stuff a rangefinder, grunt tube, just whatever little things I needed for that evening set or morning set.
Yep. I've found that being minimalistic is the way to go, especially in the mobile game. But that's something we're going to get into here in a little bit. What I did want to tell you is it was about 40, 45 yards. A deer come running up on me, and I seen it. It was one of them mornings where you could see the um, the condensation coming out of the deer's nostrils, and
Yep.
like you gotta love that. That's the shit that you live for. And
Yep. My turkey hunt this year, every time he gobbled, I could just see it coming. It was the coolest thing ever.
that's awesome. So this buck was chasing a doe. I had seen her in the morning, right before I hung, and she was kind of acting funny and moving by me. And I was just excited that there was a doe in the area because this was at about November 10th or 9th, I think is what it was. So you kind of know what's going on, and to see a deer like that, I'm thinking, okay, well at least they're not locked down right now at this moment, if you will, or she's
Yep.
not being bred at this moment.
Yeah. She's not being held somewhere.
Right, right. So, big mature doe. I'm thinking, hey, if she's around, more than likely something's gonna come looking for her. And I'm on my second step. I turn my head, and he's standing there. And he's probably at about 45 yards, 40 yards, and I'm thinking, okay, well, if he don't see me, I can get my bow up. I have my lineman's belt on, and I got 2 steps, 2 feet on my top steps on my double. I can easily shoot from this position. So I pulled the bow up, and he was on my strong side. I'm right-handed, and I got an arrow knocked, and I got the bow back, but it was just, it was just a little too thick. Like I probably had the shot, but it was just, as soon as I questioned myself, I said I'm not shooting unless he gets up to that spot and doesn't walk any further away. So I watched him walk away. That's just the truth. I bleeded a couple times, and then I went to a grunt, and I did the same thing you did, like you said. I turned my head, and I tried to make it sound like it was coming down from the hollow. And he was on that doe. He wasn't worried about nothing going on over there. And I think that he knew I was there. It's just I've been in that position where they know you're there, and they just don't care. Like if the doe's hot, they just don't care.
Yep. And it's hard to do, but that's just self control. Sometimes you gotta watch them walk.
Yeah.
It's hard, but
Yeah, and I think that you live and you learn.
yep.
When you've been in a position where you've wounded deer like I have in an unfortunate manner, I lose sleep to this day. So
I think about deer that I hit years ago, and it's like, man, if only I could have found him.
yeah, and there is something to be said to being able to rebound on that. And
Yep.
I guess we could touch into that real quick. When you do get out there and you do wound a deer, it's terrible and it's really hard, and it can be really hard to go back out there and do it again.
Yep.
And I think sometimes what it takes is you wounded a buck in early October, and you get back in the woods, and a doe presents herself. If you're going to eat that deer, I think it's time to let it fly.
Yep. To boost that confidence, that's a huge confidence booster right
Yep.
there, especially after a situation where you wound one.
Yep. Yep. And I preach that. I feel like I feel like a lot of guys walk around with their head up a little too high, like, oh, I don't shoot does. No, don't be a dick. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'm out here killing does. What's wrong with that? There ain't nothing wrong with it. Okay. So, yeah, get down off your high horse if you're listening. All right, there are some of us who do shoot does, and we'll gladly take your doe tags if you need them filled. So
Yeah, if you don't want them, pass them my way.
yeah, right. If you're not going to use them, man, we'll help the population because we got to play it on both sides, right?
Yep, good practice and food, meat in the freezer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, but it's just something to be said about being able to get back on that high horse and get out there and get the job done again. And yeah, I think that's one way to do it. And I think another way to do it is when you go home, shoot your bow. Just
Yep.
shoot. And another thing that I like to practice is, I get home from work and maybe I'm not going to go in the woods that night, or maybe I am going in the woods that night, and I just let maybe one arrow fling, right?
Yep.
I just shoot one right now. And it's like, it kind of, because I feel like that just builds up within you. Like, you're like, I haven't shot this bow.
That cold shot, it's huge, yeah.
Yeah.
And with the recurve, that was something I started doing a lot more. I mean, there was a couple mornings a lot of mornings my first year hunting with it, like I would go out in the garage. I'm only shooting 10 feet, but just to get the feel of it one time.
And that's what we're gonna do, man. We're gonna dive right into it here. We're gonna. How in the hell did you get into traditional hunting?
Yeah, it all started with a haircut. So there's a retired state cop here in town. He's
Hmm.
an older gentleman,
Okay.
and he's been a big trad guy. And I went in there to get a haircut one day. We'd always talk about hunting a little bit here and there, trapping and stuff. And I didn't know it, but he ended up telling me, he's like, "Yeah, I hunt with the recurve." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I had no idea. I mean, and my uncle started dabbling in it 2 years ago, but I mean, I never really thought anything of it at the time.
Hmm.
And he's like, "Yeah, we shoot. We have a club. There's a club which I was already part of. I shot compounds and stuff up there, 3D shoots and stuff like that." But he's like, over winter, because this had been January, and he said, "Yeah, we shoot. I think it was every Wednesday or Thursday. Every Thursday they shoot up there. Just all recurve guys. It's a trad night, and they just go up there and they shoot and have fun. They don't keep score. They just do whatever, drink some beers and just have a good time."
Hmm.
And he's like, "You should come up sometime and give it a whirl." So I think it was been following week. I was, yeah, what the heck? I'll go up. And I had a buddy uh, he would go up there with his dad and stuff. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. He's a big recurve guy. His name, you might know him, Gage Galvis.
Oh yeah.
But I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, could you bring me a bow to shoot?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." So he brought me a bow and stuff. And the whole time I was up there, I was just shooting and shooting and shooting. Those guys would take breaks, but I was trying to just figure it out. And a lot of those guys are good shots up there. A lot of them are older gentlemen. There's not many young guys,
Hmm.
but there's getting to be more young guys in it. And that was pretty much where it all started. After that night, I went home and was on the internet looking at recurve bows and everything. And I almost bought one that night. And I was like, "Yeah, I better just hold off." Next day, I got on and bought one. And I was like, "Yep, here we go." I already dove in. I mean, that was within 24 hours. I already bought one, which that was a big mistake on my part. I should have waited, and I could have bought one a lot cheaper off one of those guys.
Well, sometimes you just want to do it. And looking,
You get excited and can't
yeah,
wait.
yeah, hell yeah, man. I mean, and looking back on a lot of different stuff that I've purchased, um, like that. Yeah, I probably could have found some stuff cheaper,
Yep.
but that's like those impulse buys, man. That's why whenever you're in line in freaking grocery store and they got all them packs of gums and candy bars and all that other hoopla there, you're like, well, I kind of want that. Do you need it?
Yep. You're
No, you
100%
don't need
right.
it, but you freaking buy it anyway.
Yep.
So that happens, and I get that. But so I mean, the bug on the traditional side, it bit you pretty quickly, and I want to give a testament and a shout out to the guys that are in trad archery that are good at getting guys like me and you into it,
Yep.
because I feel like, just like you were saying, man, that's the best group of guys in the game. And I talk about it on here all the time, but I know guys that do it, and they're just not judgmental. They don't give a shit about your crossbow. They don't give a shit about your compound. They don't care that you shoot a Hoyt or a Matthews. They don't,
Yep.
you know, or fixed or expandable broadhead. They don't want to talk about none of that stuff, man. They just want to hear you talk about deer hunting or shooting your bow, and they just don't get excited. And there's such a split in the hunting community over stupid things like I was just saying, broadheads and what kind of bow you use and all that other
Yep.
stuff, that the trad guys are just like, hey, we're just over here, and if you want to be cool and just chill, we're here. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's a great camaraderie. I love it. I mean, you go up to the club and we'll all just pass your bows around pretty much. Shoot everybody's bows. You just hang out and everybody gets along. Not
yeah,
much competing that goes on.
yeah, yeah, it's cool, man. It really is cool. So you were bitten by that, and then how long right now have you been in the traditional archery?
So that was 2021. So
Shit.
I went through two hunting seasons with it. 2021 and then 2022.
So in 2021, you shot a buck your first year with traditional archery.
Yeah, and it ended up being my biggest buck to date. And I killed a doe before that with the recurve as well.
Did you shoot the doe first or the buck?
I shot the doe first.
Still, oh, damn, brother. You must have a horseshoe up your butt. You know that.
Oh, you're freaking right. And then last year I went and killed 3 bucks. I was like, man, my luck has got to be running out.
It's not though, man. Just from hearing you talking and seeing how you observe the woods, you you have been blessed, and I know that you were crediting it your dad early on there, and I can imagine the conversations and the things that you have been shown, because you don't just learn those little small details and nuances on your own. And I'm not saying you can't. Yes, you could, but what I'm saying is the best way that you learn that stuff is somebody, puts their wing over top of you and says, check this out.
Yep. And you're right with that, because even with all the mess ups I've had and all the learning experiences, I still wouldn't be half as far with those as if it wasn't for my dad. I mean, just all the knowledge and everything he showed me and the hunts he's taken me on and everything like that, that makes it that much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That is one of the beauties of Pennsylvania that we have here. Our hunting heritage, it's so strong that it's almost weird when you talk to somebody and they have no idea what you're talking about when you're talking about hunting.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, I don't know if you've been in other states or spent multiple time, like a good amount of time in other states, but like it's not like that.
Oh
Y-
no, no doubt about it. I mean, it's just part of being like born and raised here. It's just not everybody, but a lot of them. If you
Right,
ain't living in the city, a lot of people who live out like where we do and stuff. I mean, you're gonna hunt for the most part.
right, exactly. So, um, but you jump 2 feet forward, right, into this quicksand that is traditional archery, and you never turn back, right? Do you even have a compound now, or
The compound I was using was my dad's. It was a Hoyt. I have it in a case.
okay?
I think I took it back down to his house, though, honestly.
Okay.
But
I was
I
just I
haven't
was
pulled it out
just
of that
curious. I
case.
didn't know if when it come 3D time if you ran around with the compound for a while or you just hey, this is my identity and this is what I like or
Man, it's traditional or nothing, pretty much now.
sweet man. Sweet, sweet. And there's so much to be said for the difference into that. And I want you to dive into what are the biggest differences that you've found from going from a compound to a traditional setup?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's not even a ton of differences. It just comes. I mean, the biggest thing, the hardest thing with it is accepting like the yardage loss. Like you ain't shooting 30, 40 yards. I mean, you can, but if you then you're not real confident in a shot like that. But the biggest thing is getting confidence built up and being confident with the bow you're using. I'll be honest with you, I feel just as deadly with that recurve as I do with a compound.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, yep, it's just matter. And the biggest thing, I mean, with the recurve, I had to change my setups quite a bit, like getting closer and
Mhm.
getting the deer a lot closer is the biggest thing. And then
So
being able to do that without them busting you and whatnot.
So what you have found within that is an improvementship in your woodsmanship.
Without a doubt, you have to, yeah, you have to observe things a lot more. And I've noticed it. I mean, and I'm not gonna lie, even with the recurve, I've become a lot more aggressive with it too, because those opportunities don't come very often.
Hmm.
And when it comes to the recurve, I need as many opportunities as I can get.
It's badass, man. I'm just gonna let you know, like it's to me, and like I told you before, I am going to go that route. It's a matter of time. I just have my feet in a lot of different ponds, and I'm
Yep.
putting out a lot of different fires here and there. But it to a lot of people, I think that the traditional way is very scary, if you will.
Yeah,
Or
and it is, and that's the thing. I started telling everybody after like a week or two of shooting. I was like, "Oh, it's recurve or nothing, recurve or nothing." And I'm a man who I eat my words. I don't like to be proven wrong. So after that, I was like I was second guessing myself constantly. I'm like, it ain't all about killing every year and stuff like that. But I was trying to talk myself through it. But I mean, I had to stick with it. I told everybody I was switching to it, and I wasn't giving it up. I started my season off with two misses, and a lot of people would go back to the compound. I was like, I can't. I got to stick with it.
yeah, well,
Got
yeah,
to eat my words.
brother, hats off to you because yeah, a lot of people would because that like we're saying that learning curve is a lot to deal with, and I know one of the things that maybe you can attest to is how much more do you think that you shoot that recurve than you did when you had your compound?
Oh my gosh, a ton more. I won't lie, I've been slacking lately, but the first after going up there and shooting with those guys, I mean, I once my bow came in, I was shooting every day, clean up the season, and even throughout season, which was the weird part. When my compound, I put that thing down before season. There might be a week I go without shooting it, which is wrong. It shouldn't have been like that. I should have been shooting it a lot more. But
Hmm.
the recurve, I was just addicted to shooting because it's something that's just so hard to master, and like it's just so addicting. It's hard to even explain.
Is there anything that you do when you're shooting, like to try to mimic a real life situation? Do you shoot out of your saddle? I mean, what do you
Oh yeah,
do?
Yep, I shoot out of my saddle. I mean, quite a bit just to get used to things. But I do hunt from the ground quite a bit too. So I mean, shooting from the ground is what I do for the most part. But the thing is, I don't have to shoot out of my saddle a ton because my setups, I don't climb near as high as I used to with the compound. Compound, I get up 18, 20 feet. With the saddle, I stay low.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing too. It's sometimes hard to find cover low. But I mean, I use 2 sticks and they're mini sticks and I have an 8er on each. But a lot of times I'm only hanging anywhere from like 10 to 13 feet.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I hunt the same exact way that you hunt. And
Yes.
what I have found is, and actually, the one I want to make a shout out to somebody I know, and that's Byron over at the Whitetail Experience. He has really been pushing that out there, just one sticking, and not like one sticking to get up the tree, like a one stick hang out, one stick. No, just one stick and hunt in a beech tree, on the
Yep.
ground, or like, really using the terrain to your advantage and not having to hunt high. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to come out and say, "Well, I hunt high because of thermals." Oh, I understand. There's different situations, and there's things that need to be different for all different places. But
Right.
I'm very comfortable, very very comfortable at 14 to 15 feet, and
Yep.
I can do it pretty quickly and pretty efficiently with 2 sticks, like I do.
Yep. And my biggest thing, it's just the whole kill zone. I mean, if you're at 18, 20 feet, it's a lot different than being anywhere from like 12 to 13 feet. Like
Yeah.
12 to 13 feet, I mean, you're right there with them. Like
Hmm.
your the angles aren't changing a whole lot, unless they're right underneath you, of course.
Yeah, and that is a testament to so I have nice camouflage, if you will. Um, why did I buy nice camouflage? I won't say it wasn't all because I'd like to see the hype, because that was definitely a little bit into it.
Yep.
But at the same time, I got a very heavy discount on what I have. So I bought it, but I will tell you, and I will be the first one to tell you that I will go out in, plain clothes. I don't want to say plain clothes, but solid colors. I have no problem with wearing greens and browns and stuff like that in a tree stand anymore, and still being at 13, 14, 15 feet, and I am comfortable. I will set myself up to where I feel like I'm hidden.
Yep. And that I feel like I could get away with wearing anything because I'm always trying to set it up to where I can keep the tree between me and the deer. Like that ash tree I was in, it was big in diameter, and I could pretty much keep my whole entire body behind that tree, and I would just keep it between myself and the deer. So I mean, my camo don't really come into play at that point.
Hmm. Well, the shot that you said you made it from your weak side, and I think that that's just a testament to all the practice that you do.
Yep.
And now, when you said that shot that you made on that bucklet was on your weak side, did you spin around or did you turn yourself? Are you right-handed?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep.
did you turn yourself? Did you pull the bow over the tree and go to your right, or did you spin and then brace your leg or something up against the tree and shoot around your body?
No, I was already he was still like in front of me, but the way how big that tree was, he
Uh
was
huh.
still just I just had to bring the bow up over the tether, which with a 66-inch recurve and getting away with that movement when the deer's right there at 20 yards isn't always easy.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I have a hard enough time with it scares the bejesus out of me thinking that the deer is going to be on the wrong side when I'm in a saddle.
Yep.
But like that's like my worst nightmare. What happened? I wouldn't say my worst nightmare. That 3 o'clock shot is what I really don't want. But
And it was like it was right around there. In
yeah,
between 2 and 3 o'clock is about right where it was at.
damn, that's if Kenny Loggins is around, man, that's the danger zone.
Yep. But honestly, with the recurve, I kind of like it because I can just put that arm right up against like my tether, and then my shooting arm, bow arm is always straight. So it's kind of like it lets me extend my back a little bit, and I do like it. It doesn't really allow me to pinch my shoulders a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, I think that's because, like I said, that's you're practicing enough in it, and that's where you're comfortable, and that's what I know a lot of guys are afraid of those shots and stuff like that, and I have put more time into practicing that shot, and I am more comfortable doing it. Now, don't get me wrong, if I had the time and felt like I could get away with it, I'd rather spin and get my leg braced against a tree and then swing across my body. But
Oh yeah, no doubt.
yeah, I mean that's like a natural shot. But
Yeah.
Um,
In a
yeah, man.
situation like that, with him being that close, it was just nice being able to bring it right over the tether. Because doing that, I was able to keep an eye on him the whole time. So if he were to pick his head up, I'd be able to stop the movements. I didn't have my back to him at all.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, there's all different scenarios, and you have to be prepared for all of them. But
Yep.
yeah, when you're able just to push the bow, boy, that is a lot of bow to move around. That's why I thought maybe you spun, but holy shit, like that's yeah, I don't know, that's a lot. I'm picturing it all in my head.
And
Um,
I had to do the same thing in Indiana on that first doe I killed at recurve. She was at 8 yards. I had to do the same exact thing.
yeah.
Luckily, I had the cover.
Hey, yeah, I mean, but that's why you set yourself up in that cover, right?
Yep.
So, as far as more stuff with your traditional setup, what are you doing like about your arrows? Are you um, is there a special setup that you have or anything like that? How many grains are out in front of you on the heads? And I'm guessing you're shooting a fixed head, but
Yep. Yeah, I shoot a fixed broadhead. So when it comes to arrow setups, like with my compound, my dad, like we would just go get arrows, cut them to length,
uh-huh,
put your 100 grain fill point on your 100 grain broadhead, and
right.
you'd hunt with it.
Mm-hmm.
We'd paper tune and everything, but with recurve arrows, it's so much different because you have to get that arrow to fly straight out of your bow, and it comes down to your form and everything else. You have to be able to draw to the same point and stuff like that every time. And it's a huge game to get into. It was the biggest headache for me diving into it. It was tough to do.
Yeah. Now,
And I mean,
I mean, I guess you shoot with your fingers.
yeah, yep. I shoot 3 fingers under the arrow.
Okay. And then what do you do for a rest?
The first year, well, actually, I guess I have an elevated rest. I have a springy rest on both my bows. I'm shooting metal risers now. One's aluminum, the other one's carbon. But my old bow, which was my wood bow, it had a little brush. It had a plate on it, and it was a bare bow and had a little brush rest on it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's. What do you shoot now? What kind of bow is it?
Actually, last year I shot my buck with a Hoyt Satori, and then this winter I went to Lancaster for the Lancaster Classic, and there was a compound archer that won a Gilo, which are made in Italy, and it's like $600 bow, and he's like, I don't have any use for it. I was like, I give you $300 for it, and he sold it to me. So I have it set up, and it's 2 inches shorter too, so it's actually 64 inches, which I wanted. So then that way, if I hunted a ground blind, I could shoot out of it. Because with that 66-inch bow, I was always hitting the top.
Yeah. How tall are you?
It was 66 inches.
But how tall are you standing from the
Oh,
ground?
I'm like 5'8", 5'9".
Okay. Yeah. Just to give people an idea what that.
Yep, and I mean that was shooting sitting down too.
Yeah, that's a lot of bow.
Yeah, it is. And that's another thing. You're carrying a big stick through the woods compared to the compound.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about in an industry where even like my Matthews, I think is 28 inches limb to limb.
Yep. I have a target bow, and just the riser alone is 29 inches. 29 inches total. It's 70 inches with limbs on it.
Holy shit, that's the same one they had in Robin Hood, isn't
Yep.
it?
Pretty much.
So when you go into woods, how many arrows do you normally take with you?
Usually I'll have at least 4 in the quiver
Okay.
for the most part.
Okay.
And usually I'll have one in there with like a varmint tip on, because sometimes when I'm up there just to boost that confidence up to shoot at a stump or something like that.
Yeah, I feel that, man. I feel that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
Sometimes it
fun.
feels good just to let one fly.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about, man. We're in there to have fun. My cousin, he has a blow dart gun he takes with him.
Oh, okay.
And he just hangs out and shoots squirrel and he's having fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be cool. That's a good idea. Pack
Yeah.
it in the bag.
Well, he got one of those. I'm trying to think of that famous dude.
Tim Wells. He's
Yeah, I was
probably
gonna
got
say
one of the
Tim
Flock
Wells. That's
Masters.
what he
Yeah.
got. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, dude, it's pretty impressive, man. We had it out one day, and I was like, dude, this thing is lethal.
Oh, they're deadly. Tim Wells is shooting bears and baboons with it and everything
Yeah.
else.
Yep. Yep. That's cool, man. That's real cool. So, what advice would you give somebody that is going to get into this game?
The biggest thing is just preparing yourself, building up that confidence, it's nice to have people that can help you through it, because it's a lot to take on. Like when it comes to tuning arrows, there's so many different ways to do it, and everybody has their own way of doing it. Some people don't believe in cutting arrows. Some people will just add weight to them and leave them full length. But finding a mentor or someone near you that you can link up with that can show you stuff in person helps. But honestly, a lot of it that I learned, I mean, I can have someone show me something, but sometimes I just can't take it in. So I'll get on YouTube. The Push Archery, which they're promoting traditional archery huge, and they've grown the sport big in the past few years. But they have a video. They have a ton of educational videos. I mean, anything you want to learn traditional archery, you can find it on their YouTube.
Yeah, I think there's a little somebody you may know from them, so not too far out from here that you might hear on here. So,
Oh, okay.
uh,
Zernzak?
we'll see.
All right, all
We'll
right.
see what goes on here. So, yeah, there's a big movement behind the traditional scene, and I don't know where it come from, but the only thing I could think of is people are finding more hard shit to do, right? We talked about this before,
Yep.
and there's a grit and a feeling of completion that comes with doing things that are harder than they should be or normal.
Yep. Switching
And
up that challenge.
right, and I know guys that are going from recurves to longbows.
Yep.
And I can't even think of the other type of bow. I can't think of the name of it. Um, I wish I could, but it predates the longbow. So, I mean, I see where these guys are going with it, and it's awesome, man. I'm in for it. I think it's awesome. I think that being able to get as primitive as possible is great. We live in a state that promotes it with our flintlock season. Um, it's exciting, super exciting.
Oh, it's a blast. I mean, you got to dive into it. Once you do, man, it's hard to look back. It's just a blast to shoot, and the people are awesome.
Yep, yep. So, is there any events or anything like that coming up in your area that you want to promote?
Uh, there's not a ton of. I mean, there's a handful of 3D shoots we have to drive to, but there's a big every year. There's a Sawmill, PA. They have a traditional archery shoot. It's called ETAR, and I mean, there's just thousands of people that go, and it's a blast. It lasts. I think it starts on a Thursday, and it runs till Sunday. But there's vendors. I mean, there's like 9, 10 different courses, and just anything traditional archery you can imagine. It's a great time. So many people there, and lots of people to meet. It's a blast.
That's awesome, man. That is really cool, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So anybody's listening, if you heard that, um, I love anything that goes on here in this state that we have, and I'm glad you brought it up. But in our great state, what are some things that you think that our state is doing really well? That could be any type of conservation or whatever you want to talk about that's on your head. And then what's some things that maybe that you would like to see change?
One thing, I mean, obviously the antler restriction's a huge one, but I really like seeing them take that rifle away from fall turkey. I noticed the turkey numbers getting low in our area, and I think that would definitely save some birds because I know a lot of people will just go out and find a flock and plink one with the rifle. So I think that helped out. As far as things that would change, trying to think of one.
You know that you can thank somebody for standing in front of everybody there for that antler restriction, man, and that was really hard for that guy to do. I still don't know
Oh yeah,
how he did it.
I've heard the stories I've heard, yeah, just about the criticism he took and everything else.
Yeah, pretty wild,
But
man. Pretty wild.
yep, there's a lot of people that are probably kicking themselves in the butt for the things that they said about that whole movement. But that's got to be one of the best things that's happened around here. And I know there's a lot of people who say that. I know a couple people who say that's not what changed it, blah blah blah. But that's
That's
hands down, I think, one of the biggest things.
that's the numbers. The numbers don't lie. That's what changed
No,
it.
nope.
That's what changed it for sure.
Yep. I'm trying to think of something.
Well, you know what, man? It's not a bad thing if you
Oh,
can't think of anything.
one thing is the turkey. I won't mind seeing him go to one spring gobbler tag.
Okay. All right. Do you agree with when the season comes in?
Uh, yeah, I have to just because I hear. I mean, the biologists usually know what they're talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing. It has it's 50-50. It's double-sided sword when it comes to whether it starts earlier or not because it has its pros and cons. But they say it saves a lot of turkeys.
I really truly believe it does. I
It
just
does.
in my
And
opinion.
just
And
think about it, like the youth weekend, from the youth weekend to the first weekend of like the adult, a lot changes within that week. I feel like
I
you
mean
go out that
that's
youth weekend and it is wicked sometimes.
I feel like it's always like that green up either happens like right then when the youth season comes in, like that week. It's like
Yep.
always that week like the green up is like okay, it was like you could see and now like no, it's green.
Yep.
And that obviously makes it a little bit harder to see
Oh
birds and
yeah,
stuff
without a
and
doubt.
um Yeah, I think that you touched on two great things there, and those are brought up plenty of times. I do want to pick your brain just because I'm curious. Like, what do you think about Sunday hunting?
Sunday hunting, I mean, I'm an advocate for it. I know, and there's a lot of people that are against that too, but being that I
Uh-huh.
work during the week, I mean, I don't get a whole ton of time during the week to get out in the evenings. If I could have a Saturday, Sunday, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Would you, if you were in charge in any way, would you change the season in archery season, whether it would be shorter or longer?
I mean, I've always wanted to kill a velvet buck, but I don't think I'd shorten it just because I feel like a lot more deer would die because then I don't know. And velvet patterns seem to be somewhat easy sometimes, but then again, I hear them guys out like Kentucky and stuff talking about it, but those deer are also used to that, and they say how tough it is out there sometimes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of like it the way it is. Maybe a week longer sometimes because I know after that weekends usually it's always freaking hot.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, man. I've always thought the same thing because, oh man,
One more week, I think it would make a world of difference.
yeah, it would. It would, but a lot of rifle hunters aren't gonna like hearing that either.
Nah, there would be a lot
But
of
dude, the
rifle
thing
hunters who won't
is,
like that.
you're never gonna make everybody happy, and you just got to make decisions that are the right ones. Whether they're right or
Yep.
wrong, you got to make them work. So, fortunately, we have a lot of money that rolls through the system here for outdoor activities here in Pennsylvania, whether that be parks and recs, whether that be national land, whether that be game lands. And we're blessed to have what we have here. I know in my house, I can't go more than, I don't know, probably like 8 miles without touching at least 3 or 4 different tracks of state game lands.
Yep, and I'm in the same boat as you. There's so many public chunks that are just awesome hunting and well managed and everything else.
Yeah, and it's just gotten better, man. And I do want to give a shout out to the land guys, the guys that take care of all the land on the state game lands, man.
The game lands, it's something how much different going from the game lands because there's a lot of game lands that border the national forest, but like
Hmm.
just seeing where the differences in the lines, like the cuts on the game lands, those freaking cuts are hot.
Yeah.
The national forest, they don't do a ton of cutting really,
Right.
so there's a lot
Well,
of deadfall and just stuff like that.
so I mean, there's different laws and regulations into all that
Yeah.
stuff, and that's why, like, yeah, like if you shoot an 8-year-old deer up on Allegheny National Forest, like that deer, you got to think of the difference. Like the deer on the game lands, like the game lands has been made for a wildlife restoration area.
Yep, and then yeah, the national forest, they're not so much focusing on that. They're focusing on the woods and
The
that
the
nature there.
conservation, that's
The
it.
conservations. Yep.
They're protecting it.
Yep.
So, now don't get me wrong, I still think that they need to go in and take a look at like cutting fire lanes and stuff and fire
Oh
breaks.
yeah.
Because you
Yep.
look at like what goes on out in California and all that stuff. Like I think it's something we should look into a little bit more. But
Yep.
um,
There's definitely because some of them tracks up there. I mean, there's not many roads that cut through some of the places there, and if they would break out in a fire, it'd be tough.
right, right, and maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, I'm not a forester or stuff like that. It's just it's just off the top of my head. But
Yep.
um, what are you thinking for this year, man? I want you to hit me with some goals here before we get moving.
I'm pumped for the season, man. I've been itching. I just hope to keep the streak going, get another recurve buck on the ground.
Yeah,
Uh,
hell yeah,
my goal is always just punch that Pennsylvania tag, and anything after that's a bonus.
yeah.
But even if I don't, it's just all about being out there and enjoying it.
Have you thought about doing any traveling at all?
Yeah, we travel usually once every year. We went to Ohio the first year, then we hunted New York, and then these past 2 years we went to Indiana. I'm going to Indiana again this year. It'll be my third year.
Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get off. We can't be
Yep, that works
we
for
can't
me.
be spilling any honey holes there.
No,
So,
no, not at all. Not about Indiana.
so man, anybody that wants to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you? And are you open to helping people out?
Oh, absolutely. I love helping anybody who's ready to dabble in traditional archery. I mean, there's a lot of young folks getting into it, and I just enjoy talking it and going to shoots with people and meeting new people. But you can message me on Instagram at Alex Lindemuth, and same thing is on Facebook. Just shoot me a message there, and I, I'll get back to you.
Mr. Alex Lindemuth, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Um, Conversation was as good as I thought it would be, and I'm excited to see how your season pans out. And maybe we'll check in with you here later this year or early next year.
Yep. Thanks for having me, man. Good luck to you and all the listeners out there. Hopefully everybody can have a successful season.
Hell yeah, man. I hope everybody puts one on the ground. So until next time, brother.
Yep. Take it easy, man.
You have reached the end of another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. And guys, as I do at the end of every episode, I just want to touch base with you and let you know that I appreciate the support so much. Alex, thank you so much for coming through. That was a great conversation. I do believe that most listeners will really enjoy the headspace that me and you are both in on this episode. And guys, the recommendations for what you want to hear next is super important. I'm trying to touch on as many things as I can in the outdoor space, and I'm not a one-trick pony, but I like to trout fish, deer hunt, do some small game hunting, and I have dipped my feet into some other things. And if you guys know some guys that you want to get on the show, you need to let me know, and I'll gladly reach out to them and try to get them to come through here. Other than that, guys, I just want to give you an update. We're going to be bearing down on deer season here, and I have some special things lined up going right before deer season. You guys are definitely going to hear some voices that are prominent here in Pennsylvania coming up for that. So super excited to let you in on that, and there's also something huge coming that I won't even give a hint on. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, comment, review. That's huge for the show. Thank you guys. See you soon.